With the sight of steam on the high iron little more than a memory, fans of the steam locomotive are limited to visiting tourist railroads and chasing occasional mainline steam excursions. Fortunately for the avid rail fan, there are a few nations around the world in which steam locomotives still play an important role. In South and Central America, in fact, there are a number of railroads that still maintain active steam rosters. For most of us, traveling south of the border to ride behind hard-working Baldwins is a dream that will never come true. But again, we are fortunate that a number of superb cameramen have journeyed to these foreign countries. They have brought back images of railroad operations that have not been seen in the United States in more than 30 years. Among these individuals, cinematographer George Lilac ranks as one of the best. Vice President of Operations on the Western Maryland Railroad for many years, Mr. Lilac combines his railroader's knowledge with an expert photographer's eye to capture on 16mm film the most exciting scenes of railroading in Latin America. Now, by special arrangement with Mr. Lilac, the best of his film work has been professionally transferred to videotape and assembled into this series of unique programs by Berkshire Productions. In this program, we will follow two of Mr. Lilac's tours to Central America. In part one, filmed in November of 1972, Mr. Lilac and a group of about 30 rail fans explored the spectacular railroads of Central America. For 7 days, the group visited Guatemala, El Salvador, and Costa Rica with a special side trip to see the Panama Canal. In part two, filmed a year later in 1973, Mr. Lilac returned to Guatemala and El Salvador for another look at the two countries and their railroads. The Central American railroads are all narrow gauge. They have a distinctively North American flavor, as most were built by and for companies from the United States. Their routes wind through thick, humid jungles and climb through and over the mountains that form the backbone of the Americas. Spectacular mountain vistas, deep, narrow gorges, sharp curves, and long tunnel bores are routine sights on many of these lines. In Central America during the 1970s, dieselization was just beginning to take place, and even the most progressive lines still maintained fleets of steam locomotives. The Central American rail adventure began on Saturday, November 18th. Members of the tour gathered together at New Orleans International Airport from hometowns around the U.S. From this point, the journey will cover almost 6,000 miles, with more than 500 miles on rail, 100 miles by bus, and the other 5,400 miles by modern jet airliner. At 4 p.m., Aviateca Airlines Flight 500 departs from New Orleans for the 3-hour flight to Guatemala City. Guatemala City is the capital of Guatemala, the third city to hold that honor. Unfortunately, the first two capitals were destroyed by earthquakes, a common occurrence in this part of the world. Guatemala City has a population of 1.8 million and sits at an elevation of almost 5,000 feet above sea level. The population of Guatemala is comprised of Indians, the descendants of the original Spanish conquistadors and their colonists, and a mixture of both called mestizos. The people of Guatemala are multilingual, speaking both Spanish and a number of Mayan dialects, as well as varying amounts of English. 90% of the population is Roman Catholic, but the ancient Mayan religion is still practiced, especially out in the more rural areas. This is an old and honored culture. The Mayan Empire flourished for more than 1,000 years before the arrival of white men. Their calendar and mathematical system were highly sophisticated and accurate even by today's standards. However, the modern Guatemalan economy is based primarily on agriculture. Coffee, sugar, bananas, cotton, lumber, and corn are the major crops, and more than half of the population are farmers. Warm breezes from both oceans bathe Central America, making the climate range from mild in winter to swelteringly hot during the summer. The Railroad of Guatemala, or Ferrocarril de Guatemala, is also known by the acronym FEGUA. It was built and operated by North Americans in order to haul harvested crops to the ports on both the Atlantic and the Pacific, and to carry people and equipment into the interior. The 3-foot narrow gauge line consists of more than 500 miles of track on 2 divisions. The Atlantic Division stretches east and south from Guatemala City to Puerto Barrios and the El Salvadoran border. The Pacific Division runs west and north to the port of San Jose and to the Mexican border. The Pacific Division also includes 3 smaller branch lines that originate along the northern route and run west to ports on the Pacific Ocean. Most of the railroad climbs through mountains, with grades often exceeding 3%. In 1972, FEGWA's roster consists of about 50 locomotives evenly divided between diesels and steam. Unfortunately, lack of spare parts and other shop limitations mean that a number of locomotives will sit out of service for long periods of time. The older steam locomotives appear to be held together by baling wire and a prayer. But the workhorses of the line are sturdy little Baldwins, built between 1928 and 1948 and supplemented by a handful of Krupps and Porters, which are similar in size to the D and RGW 470 class Mikados. Most of the freight work has been handed over to diesels, but mixed trains are usually pulled by steam, and the older Baldwin 10-wheelers and consolidations handle the majority of the yard chores. All of the steam locomotives on the FEGWA are oil burners. The first steam special of the trip begins on Sunday morning, November 19th at the FEGWA main station. Baldwin number 180, a 2A2 built in 1946, is to be the engine on the head end. As the Guatemalan crew prepares the locomotive, Mr. Lilac and some of the group arrive early to observe the yard operations and watch another train leaving for the Pacific coast. The Guatemala City Yard includes shops and a roundhouse and is a very busy place. The first day special is scheduled to travel from Guatemala City to Zacapa, a division point almost 100 twisting mountainous miles away. Much of the trip will be downgrade, as Zacapa sits at just 600 feet above sea level. However, the line crosses 3 summits in between, and the train will be climbing and descending on 3% grades in both directions. This is the rugged backbone of the American continent, the link between the Rocky Mountains of North America and the Andes Mountains of South America. The scenery is absolutely breathtaking, and the completion of the FEGWA is a tribute to the people's determination to succeed even in this primitive environment. The first run-by after leaving the main station is at the Puente de las Vacas, or Bridge of the Cows. This span is 260 feet high in the center and is located just inside the corporate limits of Guatemala City. In order to provide an authentic mixed train appearance and to enable number 180 to work on the grades, several freight cars have been added to the consist, which also includes a baggage car, a coach, and an open platform business car for the group. After crossing the deep gorge at the Bridge of the Cows, the special continues down through the mountains for about 60 miles. Again, the scenery is incredible, and 180 puts on an excellent show. Near Agua Caliente, the special crosses the Puente Las Aculcha, then takes the siding for a diesel-powered freight before proceeding east. At Santa Rita, the special pulls into a siding so that 3 scheduled southbound trains may pass. The first of these trains arrives, a mixed, carrying fruit and people to the capital and beyond. Fegua is Guatemala's only common carrier, and roads in the country are often poorly maintained. Therefore, the people, like their neighbors throughout the region, utilize these trains like we in the U.S. use our buses and highways. The stark reality of poverty in an underdeveloped nation often contrasts with that country's natural beauty. The other 2 trains also pass. They are freight only, and like the first westbound, are powered by diesel electrics built by GE in Spain. As the day draws to a close, the town of Zacapa will appear soon. This town is only 100 miles from Guatemala City, but seems decades behind in time. Zacapa is a railroad town. The main hotel, the Hotel Ferrocarril, is more than 50 years old and was built by the railroad to serve first-class passengers. On Monday morning, November 20th, the group is scheduled to travel north on the line to the United Fruit Company's huge banana plantation at Bananera. The early risers enjoyed the chance to observe the morning action at the Zacapa yard. This includes watching a northbound work train leaving ahead of the special, with Baldwin 2A2, number 182. There are a number of steam locomotives stored at Zacapa. Some are waiting for overhaul, others are being cannibalized for badly needed spare parts. While steam is still strong in these Central American countries, the diesel is an ever-growing reality. And of course, neither parts nor new steam locomotives are being turned out by the shops in the U.S. Thus, when an engine falters, she may be repaired or she might be stored and be disassembled piece by piece to become part of a dozen other locomotives. Also on the property is an ancient but effective steam-driven turntable. The steam special leaves Zacapa and descends for some 20 miles into the thick Caribbean rainforest. Along the way, the charter special must wait for a southbound passenger train. Stopped next to a field, we see a local farmer plowing his land with a wooden plow pulled by oxen. Now the group enters the sort of climate that most people associate with Central America. It is interesting to note that the Pacific Division of the Guatemalan Railroad was completed in 1884. But this section of the line was started in 1898 and not finished until 1908. It took more than 10 years to construct the 100 miles of track through the jungle. Traffic is usually heavy on this line, especially when the bananas are in harvest. The special's destination today is one of the United Fruit Company's major plantations and is the location of a large fruit processing plant. Arriving at Bananera Junction, the special's consist is switched over to United Fruit Company tracks, and one of their diesels takes over. UFC's steam is stored, still on the property. As is the case throughout Central America, the economy of Guatemala is mostly agricultural and labor-intensive. Much of the nation's wealth is controlled by a handful of old and powerful families. And like many of her neighbors, Guatemala's history since the end of Spanish rule has seen its share of coups and revolutions. At the banana plantation, the fruit is grown and picked, then processed and packed at this plant. Notice the plastic covering the bananas in order to guard against insects and birds. They are hauled into the plant hanging from a cable-drawn trolley. Here, the plastic covers are stripped, the bananas are cut off the stem, they are washed and graded, and then packed into wooden rail cars for the 50-mile trip to Puerto Barrios, Guatemala's major port on the Atlantic Ocean. After visiting the plantation, the group visits the ancient Ruinas de Quirigua, or ruins of Quirigua. Discovered by an archaeological team in 1840, this Mayan Indian city flourished for more than 250 years, from the end of the 7th century AD to the middle of the 10th century. A prime attraction for hardy visitors as well as archaeologists and anthropologists, Quirigua was a treasure trove filled with magnificent sandstone sculptures of both humans and animals. After these side trips, the train returns to Zacapa, where the group will stay one more night at the Hotel Ferrocarril before returning to Guatemala City. Tuesday morning, November 21st, the special departs Zacapa. At El Rancho, 33 miles south of Zacapa, the special waits in the siding to let a northbound passenger train pass. With the passenger train clear, the steam special is underway once again. This section of line is extremely rugged. The train will climb about 4,400 feet in less than 60 miles, with much of the climb consisting of long 3% grades over and around the merciless but beautiful mountains. On Wednesday morning, November 22nd, the group leaves the country of Guatemala aboard TACA Flight 211 for a short 112-mile hop to San Salvador, which means Holy Savior, and is the capital of El Salvador, which means the Savior. The major attraction in this country is a short bus trip to the city of Sitio del Niño to observe the almost simultaneous arrival of 3 steam-pulled trains. 143 kilometers long, the ferrocarril of El Salvador is the shortest of the country's 2 railroads. The other is what remains of the international railways of Central America. Headquartered in El Salvador, this line is very much reduced in size since the nationalization of many of its divisions. A line steeped in history, IRCA is the latest privately owned line in the area, except for a few tiny branch lines owned by the United Fruit Company. Cash poor and struggling to remain viable, the FES operates well behind modern times. The line's steam locomotives and cars are truly ancient, with old-fashioned link and pin-type couplers being the standard. The 3 steam-pulled passenger trains are scheduled to arrive within minutes of each other, a sight not seen in the U.S. in decades. The first of the 3 trains is pulled by locomotive number 110. And has 12 cars en route from San Salvador to the city of Sonsonate. The second, pulled by number 12, is a local from Sonsonate. This train will work the Sitio del Nino yard before heading back to San Salvador. And finally, the third is a local, with number 102 on the point from the little city of Santa Ana. After observing the arrival and departure of the three trains, the group takes a short bus ride to Sonsonate, the headquarters of the Ferrocarril of El Salvador. This city is also the location of the railroad's repair and storage facility. While observing the action at Sonsonate yards, another local departs for a short run to the Pacific coastal town of Acajutla. This is a gasoline-powered rail car, which is one of many on the line. All rail cars have been affectionately nicknamed Galloping Bananas. At Sonsonate, the group boards a chartered steam special for the return trip to San Salvador. This run through the Salvadoran countryside will include photo run-bys at several bridges. As the special pulls out of the Sonsonate yards, another local pulls into the yards. This is one of the same trains that the group had observed back at Sitio del Nino. The countryside of El Salvador varies from flat with short trees and scrub brush to mountainous with thick, humid jungles in between. The first of the photo run-bys takes place here at the bridge over the Rio Casia. This large structure was constructed of welded rail sections and is the largest bridge on the Ferrocarril of El Salvador. At Armenia, the pennants that decorate the train are removed. These had been an annoyance for the many photographers on hand, and as it turns out, were nothing more than an advertisement for a local beer company. At the next bridge, over the Rio Tanic, there is an opportunity to photograph a number of Salvadoran children at play and their mothers doing the laundry in the river. This is a task that has been performed in the same manner here since human beings first inhabited this land. It is also another sharp reminder of the differences between the lifestyle in such countries compared to the lifestyle enjoyed back in the United States. At Sitio del Nino, the special's crew of 7 gladly poses for the group's cameras before proceeding on to Santa Ana. While this section of the line contains very little industry, The mixed trains move quite a volume of passenger traffic. Many riders board at one station and leave 1 or 2 stations later. Thanks mostly to cheap fares, they use the trains for trips of every distance and purpose. The stock cars on the mixed trains perform an equally diverse purpose. They can be carrying anything from ice cream vendors to live cattle. Note the camera chair specially mounted on the first car behind the locomotive tender. This provides an excellent vantage point for some great shots. On Friday morning, November 24th, the group takes Pan Am Flight 509 from San Salvador to the lovely city of San Jose in Costa Rica. While there, the highlight and main attraction will be a 78-mile trip from San Jose to the Pacific Ocean port of Punta Arenas and return. Motive power for this trip will be an electric locomotive on the Ferrocarril Eléctrico al Pacífico, or Electric Railroad of the Pacific. The FCE-ALP is a 3-foot 6-inch narrow gauge line, the only mainline narrow gauge electric railroad in North America. At San Jose, the FCE-ALP has its headquarters and shops. This is the only repair facility on the system. Costa Rica has not suffered as much as her neighbors from coups and other internal turmoils. As a result, the nation's economy is fairly strong, and the government-owned 15,000-volt railway is progressive and well-maintained. However, with all the available voltage, one would think they'd update the Armstrong turntable. Construction of the line, originally for standard steam operations, began in 1854 at the coast and reached San Jose, the capital and largest city, in 1910. The line has always been owned by the government and was electrified starting in 1926 and completed by 1930. The group's trip from San Jose to the Pacific Ocean is made in the comparative luxury of a private salon car, number 53, which is attached to the regular 315 train for Punta Arenas. Just prior to departure, engine number 27 backs down and couples up to our train. The trip is about 4 hours in duration and is quite scenic as the route descends from San Jose's elevation of 3,700 feet to Punta Arenas at sea level. Grades on the line are as steep as 3.5%, and some of the mountain curves are as sharp as 22 degrees. The trip heading is almost 270 degrees, or due west. In 1972, the FCE-ALP owned 13 mainline electrics, 1 electric switcher, and 4 small diesels. The diesels are used exclusively as switchers in the line's modernized Punta Arenas yard. The electric locomotives were all built in Germany, but the line uses knuckle couplers and freight equipment mostly built in America. The passenger equipment is mostly built in Costa Rica by the line's experienced carpenters. However, in 1960, the line purchased 10 coaches from a Japanese firm. In addition to the Pacific section, the Electric Railroad of the Pacific also connects at San Jose with the Northern Railroad of Costa Rica, a 3-foot 6-inch gauge line that runs up to the Atlantic Ocean port of Limon. That railroad is completely dieselized. After arriving in Punta Arenas, the group stays overnight in the Hotel Cayuga. The next morning, Saturday, November 25th, the group returns to San Jose on the FCE-ALP, retracing yesterday's scenic route. Upon arrival in San Jose, the group then enjoys an evening Pan Am flight to Panama City, a 363-mile nonstop trip taking 2 hours. The next morning, the group explores one of the greatest foreign monuments to American ingenuity, the Panama Canal, which connects the Pacific Ocean with the Caribbean Sea. Here is a view of the Pacific Ocean and the Bay of Panama as seen from the hilltop suburb of Balboa Heights, the location of the Panama Canal Zone headquarters. It was from this vantage point that the Spanish explorer, Vasco de Balboa, discovered the Pacific Ocean in 1513. His discovery, while searching for cities of gold, proved that America was, in fact, a new world, and not simply an extension of Asia, as had been originally assumed. In 1903, the Republic of Panama granted the United States permission to occupy and operate the 51-mile-long canal. The structure in the background is the Bridge of the Americas. It is part of the highway that runs the length of North and South America, with only 1 or 2 small gaps in the route. One of these, the Darien Gap, is located south of Panama. This is Miraflores Lake, almost the center point of the canal's ascent and descent over the mountains. The 2 Miraflores locks are the first and second lifts from the Pacific side. A ship crossing the Panama Isthmus from the Pacific must be lifted up to the lake, then ascend 1 more lift after the lake, and then descend down through the Gatan locks in order to reach the Caribbean Sea. This trip is actually south to north rather than west to east, as one might assume. The canal is now very important to world commerce, but no longer as critical to American military strategy, thanks to the presence of carrier battle groups on both oceans. Later that morning, after exploring the canal zone, the group boards Pan Am Flight 586, a Boeing 747 jumbo jet, for the trip back to the U.S. This final leg is 1,186 miles from Panama City to Miami, Florida, where the group scatters to various connecting flights home. For Mr. Lilac, returning to his home in Baltimore, Maryland, and for us, this marks the end of a fascinating travel experience. An all too brief glimpse at a unique collection of railroads and a world separated from our own by time as much as distance. In part 2 of the Central American rail adventure, George Lilac, cinematographer, rail enthusiast, and former rail executive, returns to the 2 nations of Guatemala and El Salvador. Mr. Lilac and his group of 28 intrepid fans and explorers begin their 9-day journey on November 10th, 1973, at Miami International Airport. This is almost exactly a year after Mr. Lilac's first Central American rail adventure. Pan Am Flight 503 takes the group to Guatemala City, a distance of 1,092 miles, including a stop at Merida, Mexico. The purpose of this year's tour is to explore the Pacific division of the Ferrocarril of Guatemala, known as FEGWA. This is a nationalized 3-foot gauge railroad that crisscrosses the country from ocean to ocean and Mexico to El Salvador, with Guatemala City the political center point of the Atlantic and Pacific divisions. This city is also this year's starting point for the group's rail excursions. Guatemala City is nestled in the mountains almost 5,000 feet above sea level. Guatemala is about the size of the state of Tennessee, with roughly 42,000 square miles. About half of the people are Mayan Indian stock, with the remainder mostly mixed blood, or mestizo, and a small percentage are of Spanish descent. The FEGWA is entirely 3-foot narrow gauge with a total of about 500 route miles. The line's operations are American style and are reminiscent of the Rio Grande narrow gauge lines. FEGWA is one of the last strongholds of steam in the Americas. Unfortunately for rail fans, diesel electrics are rapidly taking over the freight operations, though most of the passenger and mixed trains are still pulled by steam. The yards and shops at Guatemala City are still a prime attraction in the early 70s, with steam-powered switchers hustling back and forth and crowded mixed trains arriving and departing. Here, train number 3, with FEGWA diesel number 914, begins its journey to the Mexican border at Tecon Uman, about 180 miles northwest. Part of the fun in arriving early at the yards is watching the Fegwa crew prepare the engine and cars for the group's special steam charter. Here, diesel switcher number 701 assembles the charter train consist in preparation for the trip to San Jose. The head end power for today is number 204, a Baldwin-built 282 outshopped in 1948. Like all of the line's steam locomotives, number 204 is an oil burner. A faulty injector means a short delay, but repairs are quickly made. The perky Mike pulls out of the roundhouse lead and backs down to pick up her train. The consist for today's mixed train is 5 boxcars and 3 passenger cars. The route for today's special is 76 miles long and descends from Guatemala City to the Pacific port of San Jose. This segment of Fegwa was the first railroad built in Guatemala, with construction having begun in 1879 at San Jose and finally reaching the mile-high capital in 1884. There are water stops and photo run-bys scattered throughout the trip, and since the train is a chartered special, there's no rush. The atmosphere is relaxed and jovial. South of Villa Canales, at El Zapate, the special runs along the beautiful shores of Lake Amatitlan. At El Llano, the train stops for water before proceeding south. Near the town of Polin, the train passes over a high trestle before descending Polin Hill, the steepest hill on Fegua. Again, the Central American countryside is scenic and diverse. A complex land of jungle and desert crammed between equatorial oceans and jutting mountains. Fegua diesel number 913 heads up train number 4 at milepost 238. The special must wait for it to clear before continuing the journey. While stopped at Escuintla, at the base of Polin Hill, photographs of friendly local children are taken. At Santa Maria, the branch to San Jose leaves the main line and continues south. A yellow crummy has been added to our consist. On Monday, November 12th, the group leaves Fegua to explore the sugarcane fields with their ancient tiny steam locomotives and wooden cane cars. At Pantaleon, near Santa Lucia, the group discovers on the plantation several 30-inch gauge diesels and a working active 1924 Baldwin wood-burning 062. Here, the little Baldwin pulls a string of empty cane cars, a rare and unique photo opportunity for the visiting rail fans. This line also operates a 1910 two-truck Shea woodburner during the sugarcane grinding season. Fegua touches both oceans, the Atlantic at Puerto Barrios, and 273 rail miles away, the Pacific at San Jose. Arriving here after exploring the sugar fields, the group visits the railroad's supporting shed and loading pier. The port is not busy at this time of the year, but the pier is still in use as a gathering place for local fishermen. Note the black beaches in the background. The sand is black, but this is not due to any major oil spills. These clean and very hot sand crystals are formed from volcanic lava that has been ground into sand for thousands of centuries by the eternal movement of the ocean. The pier is well maintained, and the name of the railroad's prior owner, the International Railroad of Central America, is carved into the pier structure. On Tuesday, November 13th, the group departs San Jose and returns to Guatemala City behind number 204. At Escuintla, about 48 miles out of Guatemala City, the train takes on helper number 181, a 1947 Baldwin-built 282. This is the toughest portion of the Fegua Pacific Division, with extremely sharp curves and grades of up to 3.7%. Escuintla serves as a terminal and a helper base. Now a double-headed steam train. The 7-car special begins the climb to the capital, blasting out of Escuintla. At Santa Tomas, the grade steepens, but the two locomotives grip the rails with a vengeance, ascending the hill. reaching the calm shores of Lake Amatitlán. 181 has been removed, and 204 is once again pulling the special by herself. The special has conquered the grade and will ride into Guatemala City further down the line. On Wednesday, November 14th, we charter another special. This time, Baldwin-built number 180 is on the point as we travel from Guatemala City 61 miles to El Rancho, another division point on Fegua. Number 180 was built in 1946. The railroad descends from 4,910 feet at Guatemala City's Central Station to just 900 feet at El Rancho. In between are numerous climbs and descents on 3% grades over high bridges and deep gorges and through several narrow tunnels. At the Bridge of the Cows, the 4-car special follows number 2, a mixed train on its way to Puerto Barrios. There is plenty to see on this trip, with small towns dotting the line and the lush Guatemalan forests and jungles in between. At El Rancho, 180 is turned on the Y and then takes water at the water tank before heading back to Guatemala City. Traveling westbound, the train climbs from 900 feet to almost 5,000. With the grade of the hill yet to be conquered, it was decided to leave one of the boxcars behind in El Rancho. Arriving back at Punta de las Vacas under a darkening gray evening sky, the vista changes from rural to metropolitan, and the mountains and gorges are replaced by crowded tenements, the heavy price of civilization. The second portion of this year's adventure is a short trip to El Salvador via Pan Am Flight 503. This flight departed Guatemala City on Thursday afternoon, November 15th. After an overnight stay at El Salvador, the group travels to Sitio del Niño, or Site of the Child, on Friday morning, November 16th. Here, twice daily, 3 trains arrive from 3 different directions just a few minutes apart. First to arrive this morning is the rail bus, or Galloping Banana, train number 7 from Santa Ana. Next is train number 2, with locomotive number 112 doing the honors. This is a mixed train from Sanzanati. The third and final train to appear is number 1, a mixed train from San Salvador. This train is powered by locomotive number 101, an ex-IRCA Baldwin-built oil-fired outside frame 280. Note the link and pin arrangement being used with the automatic couplers, perhaps to guard against uncoupling when moved over rough track. After a brief stop at the water plug to top off her tank, the locomotive pulls down to the station. Later that day, the group travels back to the shops at Sanzanati. Here, overhead pulleys are used to drive the machinery, a throwback to American factories during the first decades of the 20th century. A busy facility manned by hard-working and experienced railroaders, a visit here is like going back inside a time machine. After enjoying the shop and yard operations at Sanzanati, a chartered special takes the group back to Sitio del Niño, and then heads up the branch another 25 miles to the town of Santa Ana. This trip is made in a Carter-built coach that dates back to the turn of the century. At Los Lagartes, the special stops to wait for number 1 making its scheduled return run to San Salvador. The end of today's journey comes at Santa Ana. Here, the group has an opportunity to watch number 110 being turned on the Armstrong turntable. On Saturday, November 17th, the group charters their own Galloping Banana for a trip from San Salvador to Acajutla. The rail cars are homemade. They are built in the Sonsonate shops and powered by gasoline fuel. The Galloping Banana's chassis consists of a two-axle truck in front and a single axle in the rear. On the railroad's unwelded and poorly maintained track, they give a very rough ride. At El Playón, the special banana gives way to train number 2, the mixed train from Sonsonate. Here we see train number 1 at her station stop at Los Lagartos. Then further down the line at Sonsonate, the same train enters the yards. Today's destination of Acajutla is a modern port city on the Pacific Ocean. The commercial port area can be seen in the background. Finally, on Sunday, November 18th, this year's Central American rail adventure comes to an end. Pan Am Flight 504 jets the group back to the United States and the modern world. For Mr. Lilac, the flight to Miami and then the connecting flight to Washington is filled with memories of the adventure. As the former VP of operations of a modern railroad, he knows the perspective of working with the most advanced equipment and the best trained people. But now he knows there is a land in which railroading and living is simpler and harder, but is done by men and women equally determined to succeed. The Central American rail adventure is their story, as well as his.
Los gallos están cantando, compadre, están anunciando que ya viene la jornada bien. Cuando llegaré al bohío, cuando llegaré al bohío. Papá, mira, cana. Mano no se veía bien.
Berkshire Productions continues to bring you the best in railroad video, and our camera crews are traveling around the world to bring you all of today's exciting action. Here's just a few examples of what's in store for the coming months. Join thousands of already satisfied customers and experience all the excitement. Send 45 cents postage for our free illustrated catalog to Berkshire Productions Catalog Department, Post Office Box 575, Brunswick, Ohio 44212. Or call our offices at 216-225-0303. Don't miss out. Order your tapes today.